Okay, my name is Mucio Garza from Kingsville, Texas. I was in the Army for 1 year service, and then I went in the Navy. And in the Navy, I served for 3 years, 3 months, and 27 days. I was in the USS Wainwright. I was in the USS Weeks. Both of them are destroyers. That's why a lot of us call ourselves tin can sailors. Destroyers were called tin can sailors, I think, by the people that were on board the big ships, like the aircraft carriers or the battleships. They saw us floating out there like a tin can, and I think that's where the tin can sailor came from. Growing up, my life was really mostly on the struggle side. I mean, when I was little. When I started school, let's say when I was in the 2nd or 3rd grade, I was taking lunches to the people that worked in the railroad, which is somewhere around 3/4 of a mile. I usually went out there to their houses and picked the lunches. About 11:30, by the time I got there, it was already 12 o'clock for them to eat. So I did have I think about 6, 8 customers most of the time. And really, I don't recall how much they used to pay me. I don't think it was no more than half a dollar for a week or something like that. You see, they used to get paid by every 15 days. So that's the way I got paid also. Kingsville, Texas, yes. Yeah, the railroad was pretty well up and going at that time. Of course, now it's gone. It's almost gone. We used to have passenger trains. I think it was about at least 3 or 4 schedules of trains. Passengers, what I'm referring to. And then we also had the freight trains. You could hear the engine blowing mostly every morning at 6 o'clock. From there on out, you could hear it all the time. And during them days, you may not believe it, but we did have what we call this, I call it soup line or something. It wasn't the soup line, but because it was only for us kids. Austin School, we had a, I don't know what the kitchen like, the place where they used to serve the kids, us kids. I did struggle quite a bit, especially on the spelling side and English side. In math, I didn't have very much trouble. See, I had experience in math before because I went to Spanish school and I picked up some math there. I didn't go to school until I was 9 years old, something like that. We used to have a school. We used Don Baltasar. Don Baltasar was supposed to be the principal. He was the owner of the school. I mean, the owner, and he had about 3 or 4 teachers, which taught us math and writing and all that sort of stuff, in Spanish all the way through. So, really, I don't know what, but I always thought that math was my best subject. Of course, nowadays I realize different. I should have paid more attention to my English and spelling. I don't really remember this, but as I remember, I used to call the Mexican ward. But when I went to school, it was called the Austin, the Stephen F. Austin School. And really, I started going to school somewhere around 30s, something like that. You see, during my days, you didn't get to go to high school until you were in the 8th grade. You see, we used to graduate from 7th grade to high school. We didn't have middle school during them days. Well, I mean, not in Kingsville anyway. But from 7th grade, you graduated to high school. I don't really know what part of high school that would be. Really worked here. I went to CC camps, which I think it was very, very educational. I learned quite a bit. As a matter of fact, I think I learned quite a bit when I was in CC camps. You see, we used to have classes, especially somewhere around 7 or 8 o'clock. We used to have about 2, 3 hour classes in which they taught us everything, mostly social life and all that sort of stuff, and also English and all that sort of stuff. As a matter of fact, I even tried to start typewriting, but it wasn't for me. I just didn't get to it very much. What I feel that I learned the most of the CC camps is the experience of, you see, we used to do what we call percolators. That's the first time I ever heard the word percolator. In Arizona and New Mexico, especially on the foot of the mountains, we used to make what we call percolators. Now, facing the mountain, you face the rocks that way, big rocks. I would say somewhere around 12, 14 inches high, and then on the back of it, we put some small rocks. The idea of that is to eliminate the erosion from the mountains and have some of that good soil gathered on top, in front of the percolators. Of course, the percolator was somewhere around, I would say, most of the time, somewhere about a quarter of a mile long, or not comparative to the mountains. But we used to stagger them, something like that. Of course, it took quite a few days to build. During that time, I was somewhere around, I say somewhere around 18, right. 18, somewhere like that. See, that was during the time the Depression, which I don't remember exactly when the CC camp started, but my older brother went first, and he was stationed in Texas somewhere, and he put in the 2 years. You see, we had a 2-year limit. They would stay. So he put in his 2 years, and then I went in myself. I put 18 months in one place and 6 months in another. The second time I went in the CC camps, Civilian Conservation Corps, okay? I went to Albuquerque, and they sent me to Albuquerque, okay? And during that time when I was in Albuquerque, they were developing what they call Sandia Park. During them days, it was just, I think it was just a start, because we were working on the roads, we were even making log cabins. We used to go out and cut the big pine trees, and they sent them to the mill, and we worked on them. After that, well, it was somewhere around 1939, the end of 39, 40. And that's when President Roosevelt declared that every person 18 to 25 should have at least 1 year military service. So therefore, in 1940, I think somewhere in September, I joined the Army. So I put in a year in the Army, and I was one of the very few people that got discharged in time, within the year time. Not very many. Right after September, I think it was like November, like that, they quit discharging people for the 1 year military service. So they had to stay in the Army, whichever branch they were at that time, and stayed in the Army throughout the war. Mm-hmm. But I was lucky that I got discharged. I got a honorable discharge. No, still honorable discharge for 1 year. Mm-hmm. And I went to work for the railroad. I went to work for the railroad as an apprentice, carman apprentice, as we used to call them. So I did volunteer for the Army, and then when I think it was somewhere in June, I was drafted again. I was drafted, okay? And I went to the local board, man. I knew him a little, I knew him quite a bit, used to work for him. And I asked him for permission to join the Navy instead of going in the Army. And he told me very definitely, if you're in the service by that time, it's all right with us. So somewhere around, maybe a week or so before the time was up, I joined the Navy. And I joined the Navy. I started off in Corpus, but they sent me to Houston. And Houston is where I was sworn in, really in Galveston. It's right there, right around there. I was sworn in. And I think I was sworn in on June the 19th, if I remember correctly.
Of what year?
Huh?
Of what year?
June the 19th of 1940.
Okay.
And, 41, I mean, okay? 1941, for the Navy. So from there on up, I went to boot camp, and I volunteered in the Navy with my draft papers in one hand and signing for the Navy in the other hand. That's about the way it happened. I thought it was more fascinating than the Navy. I think really that's what it was. And not that I very scared to go in the Army, but I thought that the Navy was more in my style. My experience in the Army was very limited because in the first place, I was assigned to the 2nd Ordnance Department, okay? The Ordnance Department is supposed to be sort of like a shop for fixing guns, from small guns all the way up to artillery guns. As a matter of fact, I did get to see a train car with artillery guns on it. And I also saw artillery guns in Galveston, what they call coast artillery during the days. I don't know whether they still have it or not. But during the days they had what they call coastal artillery. And in Galveston, they had this gun. They were huge. To me, they were big. As a matter of fact, they used to retract from that to that over. In other words, they were almost underground. They were underground, and then when they would shoot, they would come up. That was a retractable like. That's the way I understood. Now, I did not get to see him shoot or anything like that. We were just there looking around. You know. But that's about it.
Did you spend
They also had some big mortars. They called mortars. Shoot. That was for a short distance. So by June of 1941, I was drafted. When I was drafted, I went to the local board and asked for permission to go join the Navy. And that's when he told me that I could wait until then, just so long as I was in the service, before the written time on the draft board. So I did. About a week before my time was up, I did join the Army. I mean the Navy in 1941. And really I started in Corpus, and then from Corpus they sent me to Houston. And on June the 19th, it was that I was sworn in Houston. I think somewhere around there, that I was sworn in Galveston, really. It's a place in Galveston right off Houston.
And then you went to?
To Lake Charles, Great Lakes. We went to Great Lakes for a boot camp. I was there somewhere around 8 weeks, something like that. And then I was transferred to board a ship. I boarded a ship in Boston. I went aboard the USS Wainwright, 419 USS Wainwright. Now the Wainwright is the second, this ship that I went aboard is the second named Wainwright ship that was built. I think it was built somewhere in the 40s, around 1940, as I understand. Really, as I understand, that ship did not have radar until that time that it was in Boston. I don't know how long it was in Boston, but by the time we went on board ship, we were told that they just installed what they call the radar and all that sort of stuff, sonar system and all that sort of stuff. So I went aboard that. I was put aboard there in Boston. I think it was somewhere around September of 42. Somewhere around there, September 42. And then we did go to practice rounds around a little above Maine. That's where we used to have a practice round. As a matter of fact, I made Liberty in Argentia, I think it's what they called it, this little island or something like that. It was nothing but we just went out there and drank beer, that's about it. And around, I think it was north of Maine, Portland, Maine, North Portland. We used to fire at remote-controlled planes and remote-controlled ships, something like that. In the USS Wainwright, it's got the biggest gun, and the biggest artillery it's got, or the biggest power it's got, is a 5-inch gun. Now that's also an anti-aircraft gun. See, now then it comes the 40s, which they came in 4. Most of them we used to call them quad 40s, and also machine guns. That's about. Although they they do have these torpedoes. I think it's a four barrel, 4 tubes. They shoot out of tubes. And I think that's about the power there is. That's all the power there is in a destroyer. Just also they do have what they call depth charges. Okay, these depth charges they can be set to explode, say, I think it's from the least is 50 feet below water, and I think they go all the way down to 300 feet, okay? And they're 300 pounds. They're 200 pounds and 300 pounds. Now, they are either dropped off of the rear end of the fantail, okay? They're either dropped off automatically, and that's mostly remote control from the tower. I don't know whether they did it before they put the radar or not, but that's the way they did it when I was there. They either dropped them off the rear end of the ship, or either they had sort of like this mortar type. They had a tube in there, and this mortar type would shoot a depth charges. It didn't go just about 30 feet, and then it went dip. And 99% of the time, whenever we were monkeying around with depth charges, we had to go speed up. In other words, to get away from the blast. See, once 200 pounds of power, it's quite a bit of blast. You could feel it quite a ways. Well, that's one thing about the destroyer. They're so small that everybody knows everybody, and we depend on each other. So you do get to go. First, you go in as well, like I did when I went aboard. I was KP. I was KP for about six weeks or something like that, and I was sleeping on hammocks. And the hammocks were the hammock that I was sleeping on. It was above the dining tables. So we had to get. I had to get up pretty early in the morning before breakfast. Let me tell you this little story about the USS Wainwright. I'm very proud of it. Okay.
Please.
See, the thing is that we were there in Casablanca. The first invasion that was done during World War II was in Casablanca, French Morocco, North Africa. So we were there during the invasion of Casablanca. And I remember that the Texas was hit. The Texas was still in commission during them days. So I think I remember she was hit on the port side, starboard side, mostly. It didn't do no damage. And that invasion didn't last very long. But from there, we did cross the Straits of, what you call it, right under the Rock of Gibraltar? Well, I don't remember the strait.
Is that the Straits of Magellan?
Well, we crossed them there. We got into the Mediterranean. And, of course, the Mediterranean, we were, especially in North Africa, we did get to make quite a few liberties in North Africa, Algiers, and all that sort of stuff. From there, we went to Sicily. As a matter of fact, Sicily, we were bombarded out of the harbor a couple of times. We were caught in the harbor a couple of times, and we had to get out of there fast. And at that time we were tied up along all the ships, so therefore it was pretty slow going out. But we did get out. I was in Palermo and Salerno also. In the Mediterranean, well, right after the invasion of Casablanca, I would say we came back to the United States, and then we're back with a convoy, military convoy all the way. You see, that's the duty of the destroyers, escort convoys. See, the destroyers go around the convoy, and it really is a protection of the submarines. Oh no, so any other craft that tries to fire against us. So that's when we went with the second convoy, which is all military. We went into the Mediterranean. We stayed in the Mediterranean, and I stayed in the Mediterranean until Anzio Beachhead. Now, Anzio Beachhead was a pretty good size battle there. This lasted quite a few days. And like I said, it took somewhere, well, it's 1942, and then when we came back to New York, it was already 1944, okay? Somewhere around the middle of 1944, I got what they call delayed orders, okay? This delayed orders is that you're gonna be transferred to another ship, but they give you time. I think I got about 3 weeks of leave out of that. And that's when I met Mary, the old lady. And well, I went back, but I had to report Norfolk, Virginia. In Norfolk, Virginia, I was stationed on the USS Weeks. The USS Weeks is 701, USS Weeks. This destroyer is almost the same thing as the first destroyer, only maybe a little bigger, but not quite that. It's still within the 100 feet long, something like that. The difference was that this new destroyer, instead of having 1-inch gun turrets, one 5-inch gun turrets on each turret, they had 2 5-inch on each turret. See, that's about the only difference. Other than that, it's made about the same. And I don't really know when that was, but I was in the crew that commissioned the ship. I was in the crew that we had the trial run. On the trial run, we went to the Bahamas. We went to the Bahamas sailing backwards on the new ship. That's the trial run. Of course, when we came back, we came back, and in Norfolk, Virginia, that's when another convoy, military convoy, started rendezvousing, okay? And we went through the Panama Canal in 1944. We were in the convoy. There was a battleship, an aircraft carrier, and I think it's a couple of cruisers. I don't remember who it was, what the cruiser's name was, but I remember that I think it was the Mighty Mo, the battleship that went through there. I remember it was scratching the sides of the Panama Canal when we went through there. And it takes three destroyers for each one of them locks. 3 destroyers could go in there. But then the battleship and the aircraft carrier were scraping the side of the locks. We went across the canal, and then we went to San Francisco. We were there in San Francisco for about around a week. When we were leaving San Francisco, these guys came up with a song. We won't see the Golden Gate until 1948. And that was 1944. They came out with that stuff. So really, I didn't get to see San Francisco again until 1961, where that was on my own. But we went from there to Hawaii. In Hawaii, we stayed there for about a couple of 3 weeks or something like that, no more than that. But we were still under the serious part of the war. That we couldn't have no liberty or anything like that. If we did, it was there in the Hawaiian Islands, which was only about a 4-hour job, which sent daylight, and that was just 1/3 of the crew. So I did make liberty there once, and from there we went to the Philippines. If you remember the saying that MacArthur said, "I shall return." But I was there when he returned. I was there, as a matter of fact, I think we were there about a couple of days or a day before he did. You see, we bombarded the beach. And I remember distinctly, I've never seen this one before in my life. When we bombarded the ships, in the land, I could see the ricochet of the tracer 16-inch guns, way out there, way about 12, 14 miles away. The ricochet of the bullets bouncing off the water. You see, they have what they call tracer bullets in all kind. I think it's in all kinds of, because I know they have them 5-inch and quad 40s, and these tracer bullets is to make you judge the target. So I did get to see some of that, and we were there in the Philippines. Then we went in. It's what they call Lake Leyte. That's where there was a, I think it was a 2-day battle, Navy battle. That was pretty long compared to any Navy battle. And during that time, I did get to see the aircraft carrier USS Franklin got hit by kamikazes. If I remember correctly, I think there were 3 of them. There was one on each side on the hangar deck, and there was one coming in from the rear. But I've heard some other people say there was only 2, or something like that. But one of them did go in the deck, in the hangar deck, and one of them did hit the rear. And it created such a big fire. We did call it the Floating Inferno then. That ship was on fire all over. As a matter of fact, there were sailors jumping off the runway deck. From the fire, and that's another mission of the destroyers, to pick survivors. So we used to pick survivors, and every time we picked a pilot, they used to get a gallon of ice cream or something like that from the aircraft carriers. The aircraft carriers were the only one. Probably the battleships also have all that luxury of having ice cream, something like that. We didn't have nothing but rations and cold cuts and that sort of stuff aboard ship. So that was, we did pick quite a few survivors. Talking about survivors, in the Mediterranean, I did get to see a German surface. I think it was somewhere on 150 to 200 yards. And I think that this captain was crazy about that, shooting a submarine with a 5-inch gun. And he did get that opportunity that time, because it was surfacing. And I mean to tell you, the 5-inch guns were, I was down there. You see, that was my job in the destroyer, in the USS Wainwright. I was picking ammunition from a conveyor belt made out of steel, and you pick the ammunition. It came what we call semi-fixed ammunition. Okay, you pick the projectile, then you pick the powder. So I was stationed right there where the conveyor is, me picking the ammunition and sending it to the other guy. I never did get to see the submarine, but I was told about it afterwards, that we were no more than 150, 200 yards away from it. So, but we did pick some survivors off of that submarine. As a matter of fact, I think we even got to pick the captain off of it. I don't remember. I think it was 18 survivors that we picked off of it. I don't know whether the other destroyers picked any survivors off. You see, we did started with depth charges, I guess we didn't hit them very good, so they did have a chance to surface. I want to talk about that, because that was one of the rare things for me to see a German submarine surface out in battle or something. I didn't get to see that anymore. But that is part of the work for the job for the destroyer, pick survivors and also protect the convoy. The most terrifying was when the aircraft carrier Franklin got hit. She got hit by, I still say, 3 kamikazes. I think it was one from each side on the deck, on the hangar deck, and one from the rear. And I think, and that thing went up in flames. I mean, it was just like a total inferno, a floating inferno out there. I did get to see sailors jump off of the deck, from flight deck, also from the hangar deck. The hangar deck is right below flight deck.
You were on another boat and you could see that from a distance?
Yes. As a matter of fact, we even helped them try to put the fire out around the aircraft carrier when we were picking up also survivors. You see, the kamikazes, they had a trick. You see, at a convoy, let's put a convoy, and the big ships are on the middle, okay? This is a ship, and this is a ship's idea. They used to fly to create crossfire. In other words, they would fly low, these people would fire them, and we got hit with them, or we fired this at him, and this guy's got it. That was a trick that was a pretty nice trick that they had themselves. Create crossfire other than the kamikaze type.
Did any of your friends go with you into the service? Did any of you sign up together?
No, not really. As a matter of fact, from Kingsville, I was the only one that was sworn in that day. But I did get to see a friend of mine in the Hawaiian island, Genaro Garcia. He was about the only guy that I saw from Kingsville. As a matter of fact, when I was aboard both ships, in the USS Wainwright, I don't think there was no more than one Mexican around. In the USS Weeks, I don't think there was no more than two of us. So really, I was among people that were from Philadelphia, Chicago, or I mean, way up there. Not from South Texas. See, it just so happened that we were like that. I was all alone from Kingsville. As a matter of fact, there was even very few Texans in them aboard both of ships. That's right. Mostly they were from Boston, Philadelphia, or something like that. Most of them shipmates.
Did you become friends with any of the soldiers and then later on they died?
You mean sailors or soldiers?
That you got to be real close to? Did they have
No,
to
only one sailor. I was pretty close to a friend. He was pretty close to a friend of mine, and he got killed. He got killed during. It just so happened that on that same crossfire, like I'm talking about, one of our 5-inch, I think it was, hit us on the edge of the ship, and shrapnel flew all over it, and he just so happened to be supplying ammunition to what we call the quads, and the shrapnel went right through the hull of the ship and hit him in the stomach. He died within 24 hours. As a matter of fact, we had sea burial for him. And that is, I think that was about the third time that I saw sea burials. I did see sea burials by the bunch, but 4 or 5 at the time. See, we used to pick a lot of survivors, and some of them died while they were with us, or some of them were already dead. Or, so yeah, there was even some people that you could feel the skin coming off their bodies when you were picking them up, burnt. So it was pretty. It was pretty bad when we did that a lot of times. And then seeing a sailor comrade being buried at sea, that is some hard to see. Mm-hmm. But that's the only close friend sailor that I saw get hurt. I think that if it would have been for the World War II, I think we still would be about the same shape as we were before. I mean, we're talking about on the Spanish or the Mexican side or something like that. I think that the war did produce or made, I don't know if it made us better anyway, but there is a lot of difference during the time before the war and after the war. I still say it did help. Us, I don't know what you call them, underprivileged or whatever, like the so-called Mexicans or Mexico or Spaniards or something like that. I think After the war, we started gaining more recognition. And I think that the power of being in the service or serving in the military created some of that atmosphere to change the difference between the before war and after war, in the recognition side. I really, by all my friends, I mean, my working friends, Anglos or Latins, you could see the difference in the respect. One time, that was in 1940, when I was in the 40, when I was in the Army. I was hitchhiking home from San Antonio. I was stationed in San Antonio, Fort Hood. Anyway, I was hitchhiking home. And it just happened that I went through alleys that time. I don't know why, but I just got a right going through alleys. And I did get off the car, and that's where the guy was going anyway. So, and I tried to get me a hamburger. And it was a little restaurant, and I went in there and asked for a hamburger. Told me they don't serve Mexicans. But I didn't think of it very much during the time, because in 1940 it was still something regular to us. I mean, yeah, I was wearing my uniform. I was in uniform when I went to this place, and I definitely was told that. Tell you, I felt segregated one time, yes, very much so, but I don't think it was because of my race. I think it was because I went to look for a job, and it's a big plant, okay? I'm not going to mention the name. In this plant, I thought that they were hiring at that time, and that was after I got out of the service, out of the Navy. That was in 1940. 45, 46, 45, late after, somewhere after I got discharged from the Navy. I went to look for a job in this plant, and I was being interviewed by this guy, okay? He was talking to me and all sort of stuff, and he asked me what kind of a job, he asked me what kind of job I wanted. Well, I don't think I want anything less than a helper. And at that time, he said, there is no job opening. And at that time, this lady walked in. And she said, oh yes, there is an opening. But she was talking about labor. And I told him I didn't like the job. I didn't want that job. But I think it was because she saw that I was Mexican. To this time, I still think that's the way it was. To me, it appeared that she was discriminating. I don't know whether the plant was discriminating or anything like that. But then, after so many years, I have learned that 99% of the people that go in there to work, they start as labor. Now, I don't know whether that was true during my days, but I do have a couple of friends that went to work there, started as labor, and then they went up. As a matter of fact, one of my friends has got a damn good job. He retired with a darn good job. Oh, we married in 1946, June the 9th. It just happened that was her birthday. I don't know, she picked her date. I didn't pick it. I don't know, she picked it. And I thought it was to my advantage. one present, only one day. I got out of the Navy in September. We married in June. Almost. June the 9th. We married. And we also got married in just a little hall. That's all it was. Because they were renewing the church. See, they were making the church, so we were married in the hall. Pretty nice mass, anyway. And another thing about the marriage is that we were the first ones to get married that Sunday. There was oodles behind us. I think all the churches, all the masses had weddings plus someone other without mass. And that was in June 9th, 1946. The oldest boy is Junior, Mucio Garza, Jr. And then comes Carmen Lomas Garza, known as today. And then came Maggie, no, Arturo. Arturo came after that, and then Maggie. Maggie always calls herself the fourth headache. So a lot of times when she called me, she said, this is your fourth headache. And then Jane. Jane, I think she was born somewhere in 1951. 56. Something like that. I think that my children are better educated than I ever was, or ever been, or ever will be. I don't think I would have made it through high school. I don't think I would. I think I just made it through the 7th grade, barely. As a matter of fact, I didn't even get my report card from the 7th grade. The superintendent saw me out in the street later, even after we got married. I still got your report card from school. And I think that the last days that I put in school was in 1937. I think it was in 1937, something like that. From there, I went CC camp, work here and there. As a matter of fact, I even say that they have more opportunities in the physical playing, or, and all that sort of stuff. During them days, when we were kids, we would play baseball in a 25-foot lots. You just try to 2 base, something like that. If we ever played on a 4-base baseball, we never did have that little league stuff. I wish we would have had it. We never did have the little league, the pony league, or all that stuff. We never did have it. I was in the GF4 and the Catholic War Veterans, both. We both did work hard enough to accumulate enough money to put out scholarships, especially in the GF4, in the Ladies Auxiliary. They did most of the work. They did get most of the money. When they had this concession stands in the Little League Park, they did very good. As a matter of fact, I think they put out somewhere around 4 or 5 scholarships. I don't think they were very big, but I thought it was a pretty good start. As a matter of fact, one of them, Senator Trump, I think he was the one that got the first scholarship in Kingsville. But not as much as before. You can't have this job because you're a Mexican, or something like that. That was before the war. I don't think you could have done that to an ex-serviceman during the 46 or 48, something like that. As a matter of fact, probably during the war. Of course, the necessity of during the war was there for workers. So you can say that it was pretty well noticeable, but not to the extent as before. So I do think that we did make very good strides after the war. And I don't know whether it was reflected because of the power of being a ex-sailor or a veteran or something like that, or partially we were a little better educated after the war. We learned quite a bit during the war, I think. We veterans did. Of course, a lot of other people also did learn quite a bit and started taking advantages of the opportunities. And there were a lot of more opportunities open after the war for us. I still say, I don't know where, like I said, it might have been the power because of veterans or better educated after the war. I still say that there is quite a bit of improvement to be made yet. But I don't really know whether it's up to us to work for it, and I think that's what it's supposed to be. We should work for the improvements ourselves. But there is a little hard time of some of us getting a better job than the other people do around. Like I said, maybe because of the education that we don't get it, but these kids nowadays, they're up there with the rest of the crowd. In the education part, lawyers, engineers, all that sort of stuff. Who would have thought a Mexican would be an engineer during them days? I mean, during the 30s or even in the 40s, early 40s. That was something rare. The only lawyer that I remember was Garza. But there is a little room for improvement yet. But I don't think of the idea of handing you a job. I do think the idea of you working for it. That's the way I think about it. Naturally, but if you're turned down for a job that you think you're qualified for, and then that's a little different. That to me is a little discriminating part of it. I don't know if it would be discriminating for reasons of discrimination of Mexicans or whatever. But there is some discrimination yet. I have friends that are Anglos. I play golf with Anglos. I used to work around Anglos as a matter of fact, I had a guy, I was a sheet metal worker, but I was over him because of my time. You know, he didn't think very much of him being slightly under me or anything like that. He was just a sheet metal worker, just like I was. But of course, I never did push my power or anything like that. I never did say do this or do that. He knew what he had to do because we had already laid out the way the shop ran. We understood each other. But I never did have any troubles with him. As a matter of fact, we were pretty good friends all the time. We used to run around quite a bit together. We used to have conversations quite a bit. Not to the extent of, he did go to visit us once or twice in my house, yes. Some of them I used to have. But there is still a little room for that. I still say that we can get along with the Anglos just as good as we can get along with Mexicans, I would say. Of course, there are some Anglos there, they still think that they're way up there and you can't touch them. But to the ordinary Anglo, I still say we can get along. We can get along easy. When I was a kid, say 16 or something, I couldn't go to the American town. I had to stay in the Mexican town, the Mexican part of the town, La Colonia or something like that. In Kingsville, there's Claver Street and then there's Richard Street, okay? To Claver Street, you better go out there in good business and during them times, be a businessman-like or something like that. But any Mexican just like me, he was just looked up. As a matter of fact, I saw quite a few fights there in Claver Street between Mexican Americans and Anglos. Quite a few fights. Oh yeah, that was before the war. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I would say it was somewhere around the 33, 34, something like that. The war is a lot different. I think after the war, I consider it a very much improvement for us after the war. Since there is not that much of discrimination anymore, but there is quite a bit of necessity for the education part. There's a lot of difference nowadays, especially nowadays. Even high school kids cannot get good jobs. And some of these guys that graduated from college, some of them are still having a little trouble getting the jobs. So I still say the opportunities are there, but you have to work for them. I don't think there's that much discrimination on the workforce side. There is still, but not to that extent. And so far as the work is concerned, I still say that we're up there with the rest of us. Of course, social life is a little different. A lot of Anglos that think that they're untouchable, but there's just a handful of them, I would say. Not to the extreme that we would be bothered once a week or anything by them. I don't think it would be it's like that anymore. Or look at us sideways. Well, that's a little different nowadays. These kids nowadays, they're a little more aggressive, let's put it like that. And I don't think that they would like that much, and I think they will react to it right now. In other words, they will react to it a lot more faster than we would during our time. During our time, sometimes it was even just like, that's nothing. I've seen that before. But these kids nowadays, they're a little more educated. They know what they want, most of them. And if they're rejected to get what they want, they're going to fight for it, and I don't blame them. I wouldn't blame them. I mean, to the extent of not having a big battle or anything, but just, hey, listen, mister, I'm just as good as you are. That's about the way I look at it. And as a matter of fact, I don't know, but I have seen it this way. During my time, I still say that you had to be a little better than the Anglo to get the job. I sort of thought of that myself when I got to be a journeyman as a sheet metal worker. I thought that I had to prove myself more than the Anglo people would. And in that respect, that's about the way I look at it. During the war, in the service, it's very hard for you to discriminate. Very hard. You prove yourself, you're up there. If you don't prove yourself, you're going to stay down there. I remember sailors or even that never did make it, but just to the deck force. Of course, the deck force itself has got a lot of opportunities, but staying on the deck force without being, what do you call it? I'm trying to remember. At any rate, the deck force is mostly the lowest job on a ship. I'm trying to remember what we called it, but I can't remember that right now. In other words, like say for instance, when I was in the Navy, I think I put in about 6 or 8 months in the deck force. And in the Navy, you have to strike for a job that you want. In other words, like I striked to be in a ship fitter. I struck to be in a ship fitter, and I got the job. I never did get any rating until about a year after, and I made it to third-class ship fitter. That's all I wanted, just get out of. But I wanted to get out of the deck force to go. In ship fitting really was on my style of work, because I have worked with steel before. Not that I knew very much, but about the job, but I did have knowledge of it. At least I knew what a screw was. A lot of people didn't know what. I can tell the difference between a screw and by that time I could tell the difference between a screw and a machine bolt. It's a lot of difference. So I think when I stroked for a ship fitter, that was an improvement for me in that. And I considered, even if I just made third-class ship fitter, I didn't try very much. I just wanted to be there for the rest of the war.